whatever it takes, perhaps, might be the attitude we have to take in this instance. But I'd like to hear some evidence on that.
Please step forward and state your name for the record.
I'm Tara Athen. I'm coordinator of the Mendocino Coast Cooperative Weed Management Area. Basically, the approach for the project at Casper Waste Transfer Station, it was a grant application that was submitted to the state California Department of Food and Agriculture for their money that's a line item in the legislature budget directed towards the weed management area. And we've proposed to them, among several other projects, to use the most cost-effective strategy to tackle that problem. And we've done considerable research. There are a lot of people out on the coast in the Casper area who have experience, sometimes bitter experience, with trying to deal with the gorse. And I just spoke with the State Parks staff this morning to ask them about their project on the Jug Handle State Reserve, which they started last year. And we are basically following their lead because they have very talented ecologists there who really understand the various pluses and minuses to that, and they put together a program which is turning out to be quite successful. They went in and actually pulled most of the plants out with a large machine, pulled it out by the roots, and then they are going back in now. They've already done one of the herbicide treatments as part of it's going to be several years before the whole project is finished. But they estimate that compared to going in and just spraying the plants as they were standing, what they're doing now is spraying plants that are about that high, whereas originally the plants were this high. So you've got about a factor of 10 reduction there. And as well, removing the roots there, not all of the areas are growing back where there was gorse originally. It's just patchy, so you may have another factor of 2. So you've got roughly a factor of 20 reduction by going in first and using an integrated pest management approach where you take out the mature plants and just treat the part that's growing back from the root fragments. And so this really is the most cost-effective approach, and it's also a great reduction in the herbicide use that would come from just going out there and spraying the whole thing.
Supervisor, question?
Well, first of all, private property individuals have the right to use herbicides and pesticides. We just have a policy in this county not to use it on public land. My first question is, I'm not so sure why on a closed landfill site, why we want to spend a lot of money eradicating a weed on a closed dump. That's my first question. And then if we were to use a pesticide or a herbicide at the closed, we have monitoring wells that test the quality of the leachate. And if that's going to elevate the pesticide is going to show up and elevated in the water leachate, then that's not going to be good for the county as far as the cost on down the line of dealing with that. So I don't want to put a bunch of pesticides in there and then have to be challenged by the state saying, hey, you got a landfill here that's leaking pesticides. So that's one of my, and I guess that's the reason I thought maybe these issues should have been fettered out maybe in the committee rather than here. But it's fine today, but it's just going to.
Sure.
I have some real concerns about.
I think Mr. Kaler has a response.
Tara, unless Tara has a comment, I consult. One of the reasons that the resolution is written the way it is that your solid waste division had the same concerns. That's why they're going to be consulted with in the application of these pesticides. Number two is that it's not the landfill itself, the old landfill itself, that's infected with this weed. It's the old borrow areas of disturbed soil that has been badly infected. The landfill cap itself has been effectively weeded by hand. The areas that have been overtaken by gorse are the disturbed soils that were off the landfill. The old borrow area and some of the other areas of operations are the area along the I guess, the north property boundary that have been badly infected. And I think the strategy is to try to get at that bad infestation so it doesn't spread onto our, well, it's already spreading onto our neighbor's property. So,
Exactly.
so is to get after one of the worst areas of infection, and being cognizant that Russian Gulch State Park is just south of this area, and we already have pampas grass in this area that's has spread into the park. We really do want to prevent the gorst from spreading into the parklands.
Yeah, this is just one project that's part of a much larger strategy to deal with the gorse throughout the entire area, and it's part of what's called dealing with the outliers. There's the main population of gorse there in Casper, and we've got one program that's trying to set up a containment boundary, somewhat of a stealing from the fire guys' wildfire strategy. Putting a containment boundary around that, and then dealing with the outliers. This is an outlier population which has the potential to spread the gorse outside of that main population, and we're much better off taking care of those outlier populations so they don't infect much larger areas. And I think the representative from the Ag office might be very qualified to address the issue of the herbicide in the water.
Supervisor Smith, did you have a comment?
I think it would be good at this point to hear from our other partners, because I think they've received, I believe, 2 grants that are significant to deal with the gorse issue, and that's just occurred, and they tried for these last year, were not successful. They're successful this year, so they have other partners, and I think we ought to hear from them, their perceptions about this, and how they see that the county policy will integrate into their efforts.
Sure, that's fine. Please step forward, state your name.
I'm Ray Harry. I'm agricultural biologist with Department of Agriculture. The plan as far as the herbicide use in that area is a minimal plan. It's using as little material as possible. Now, as far as the leaching concern, that certainly is a valid one. The main way we're addressing that is selection of material. We would use materials that bind to soil rather than travel through soils, and also biodegrade rapidly. And using a contact material like that, essentially you put it down, within a matter of days it's gone completely, and the chance of getting into well water is pretty much non-existent, just because it cannot go through soil.
Any questions? Supervisor.
The plant seeds very heavily, and when you remove the larger portion of the plant, and you have the stump or whatever it may be that then sprouts up again. What plan of action is there to deal with the, 100,000 seeds per cubic?
4,000 seeds per square foot.
Well, what will happen is after the biomass is removed from on top of it, we'll see a rapid flush of growth from new seedlings. And that as well may require a small, relatively small herbicide treatment. I say small because we won't be spraying overhead. It'll be close to the ground, very small quantities. And that will help considerably. The way these seedings go is that you get vast quantities of seeds, and a very small percentage of them are what we call hard seed. Hard seed with gorse can last upwards of 30 years. So this is a long-term project. But most of those seeds that are in the ground are soft. If we can kill that initial flush, first year, maybe the second year, after that, probably just hand picking from then on. Just get a plant here and there.
So you're anticipating then not just spraying the sprout